Alright, Gilbert, I got your radio here and it's all set, so I'm going to try to get it sent off to you today. So I did have one of these, I know on the website, I don't know if you noticed it, but it says special order and please allow up to 10 business days. You know, if I have the radio here, I'm going to get it done as soon as I can. And it just so happens to be the case today that I was able to get it done for you in between some other things that I have going on. So when business is a little slower, sometimes I can get radios out. And to be honest, sometimes I kind of enjoy a little downtime where I can step away from the radio and just kind of do some other things and handle some other responsibilities. But, you know, I like doing this. This stuff is a lot of fun. So don't ever think that, you know, I don't enjoy doing this, because it's not the case. So this radio is a very unique one. It's very much designed for the low kind of carrier with high swing, and that's exactly what they've done with this radio. So I find that the sweet spot on this one is probably going to be about around here on the second dot. Now with my testing and stuff, it's about 90% audio here, which you think 90%, that's not enough, but that's with the test tone. With it all the way down, excuse me, it's about 96%. When you turn it up all the way, it's only about 80%. Now that's the design of the radio. You can't really change that. Even all the way up, this radio still does good power and it has good forward swing and it sounds great. So honestly, it's almost like for what I would like out of AM, it's almost the perfect radio for just basic AM, and it actually works excellent on FM too. So, you know, we got about our 8 watts or something. Now I do have a monitor radio on. It's not really so much for you guys watching the video to hear it. It's more for me just to hear it, but it may squeal is what I'm trying to say. Now these radios, the one thing I wish I could change is the adjustable frequency. They don't give me that option. So I'm using a NM452 with a little bit of echo. I know the radio has echo, but I kind of prefer the echo on this mic because I can adjust it to this very little bit of a level, but I think it sounds great. So that's how it looks there. It's about 8 watts or so on the carrier. And then just with my voice, you know, you can see at times it's peaking up there into the 60s and 70s. Not always, but at times. I'll turn this bird peak kit on. This one will probably hang up a little harder up there, closer to 70 at least, because the bird kind of has a little less fluctuation on the PEP. Once you start talking, it kind of hangs at that level a little faster, or the reaction time, I mean, is quite a bit slower than the LP. And I purposely set the LP 100A to have a much slower reaction time, but you can still see that it's getting up there in the, I don't know, at least 50, and at times 60 or 70, and the bird is about there too. So, you know, they're both good meters to have, different reasons for both. I prefer, obviously you guys know I prefer this one. I would tell anybody personally, if you want LP, get this one. Get your own oscilloscope and spectrum analyzer if you're into that kind of stuff. I think that the 500 and the 700 are probably really good, but I think the accuracy isn't as good as the LP 100A, and that's just from the specs I've looked up. Maybe I'm wrong. If you have one of those more advanced ones, you probably love it. So I just didn't really go that route. I prefer the basic LP 100A. I think it's a great meter. I think the bird's a great meter too. You really can't go wrong if it's something you enjoy. So let's back this carrier all the way down. So all the way down, we got a little less carrier. Now I can hear the audio kind of come up a little bit. About 2 watts is the minimal amount. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you figure at 2 watts, we're swinging, there's about 60 right there, but it's easier to see here. So let's turn that back on. I'm trying to get in a habit of turning that peak switch off when I stop talking. As soon as I get off the key, I want to just flick it off. That way I don't forget the batteries are, you know, being, the batteries are basically turned on, and they're, every time that red light's on, it's sucking voltage. And if you leave that on overnight, basically your batteries are dead, which is a pain in the butt. So there's your PEP with it all the way down. About right there is that sweet spot, like I said. before, about right there. It's right at about 3 watts. And at about 3 watts, you can see the PEP on the LP100. And then here, 1 2 3 1 2 3, check check check, hello, 1 2 1 2, hello. Now I'm not going to try to razzle and dazzle people with average power, because you guys know how I feel about that. I will put a I will put a 25 in here just because I have one sitting here in the bird. And we'll key back up. Power all the way up. 1 2 3 1 2 3, check check check, oh. So it's moving forward. It's not going to give you a ton of average. I've always said this is a better measurement device for average power anyways. 1 2 3 1 2 3, check check, hello, 1 2 1 2, hello. We're about double what we were, which if I'm double the average, I'm happy. I don't want to see PEP numbers on average, because to me that's just distortion at its finest. And you know, you guys know I'm not about the distortion. I don't like that. I'm not about that. I don't need it. So the radio is all set to go for you. They're a fun little radio to use. I did set it up with the SWR protection on, so when you key up, if you have over a 3 to 1, it's going to kick the transmit out. There is a Roger beep function. You have to turn it on in the software. Once it's on, you can't shut it off unless you go back into the software and shut it off. So that's the only downside to the Roger beep. I obviously didn't put it on because I'm assuming you wouldn't want it on. If you do, you'll have to get the software. You can program one in. I like the little 2510, so I'll give you guys a pointer on how to do that. You would change this to recycle time 1. You would change first tone to 2510. I'm sorry, you would change frequency in hertz to 2510 and milliseconds 100. And that's basically like your little HR2510, the little beep. And then the rest of this would just say none and 0. Otherwise, you're going to have all these other sounds coming with it. Now, if you really wanted to customize it, you could make a kind of a crazy one. I would love to see people that have done that with these type of radios, like what you've come up with, because I kind of like that sometimes just to play around with. I think it's fun to have kind of like a musical Roger beep or something. I kind of wish they had a way to, how they have it like this, I wish they would make a way to have like a beginning burst or something. Like, just because we have a Roger beep, why not put like a identifying thing in these radios, so that not only do you have this at the end, you could have the same functionality just in the beginning. So when you key your mic, that goes off first. That would be really cool. That's something that I think these companies could do if they really wanted to. I just don't think anybody's ever thought of it to tell them. But like a lot of guys like that VFO windup and that kind of stuff, and they could probably easily do that, so we could customize it ourselves. The only other thing I wanted to talk about with radios before I get out of here, first let me check the receive, and then I'll talk about what I wanted to say. Yeah, they have a really nice receiver in them, so you shouldn't have any problems hearing anybody. There's minus 112, and she's right at about 12 there, so it's looking really good. So that's easy. There's no sideband on this one, so that's pretty much done. FM will have a really strong receiver too. And I did adjust FM to about 4 kilohertz deviation. You should have about 50 watts when it's all the way up and about 2 something when it's all the way down, give or take. Let me unplug this antenna just because I don't want to make a mistake and key up. I've since went back to a little bit of smaller attenuator here, so I have to be careful and not run the risk of that's how the tone sounds at minus 112 also, so it's very loud still for what this little guy's hearing. I don't want to blow up my expensive piece of test gear here, but I need more room, and sometimes this little attenuator, it helps out, give me just a tad bit more room. What else did I want to say really quick? So we all know that radios aren't perfect, and it's easy to take someone's video or their work or whatever when somebody wants to try to make themselves look better, and we know that that does happen sometimes in the hobby. It's a shame, but it is what it is. So, you know, I've never been one to really go down that road, and I never really plan on it. So We know that radios aren't perfect. There's always going to be little flaws in designs and the way they work. But I think we all can look past a lot of things and just try to focus on the good that makes these kind of radios fun and other radios fun. And if we can do that, I think the radio hobby still stays interesting. It's when we expect too much out of certain radios and then we start to hyper focus on some of the bad things maybe on radios. So there's some radios that do have like spurious emissions outside of the bands that we would use for given radio. And some radios, there's ways to adjust some of that stuff down, but then there's also, you have to compromise it. You know, if you go too far on some of the Ranger boards and stuff, you can eliminate a lot of that stuff, but then again, you lose all your sideband performance, which is a shame. So you have to take a compromise and sometimes have a little bit more of that spurious that you might not want to make the radio still work properly. So a good thing to use in that situation is something like this. And these guys aren't paying me. I bought these. I bought 2 of them. As long as your radio can handle, is within that 200 watt range, this would be perfect for a situation like that, where you don't want to really interfere with other frequencies and other bands, other forms of radio. And they do make bigger ones, I think, that can handle more power. Obviously, this is a 200 watt model. I'm assuming when it says 200, that means up to 200 like FM power, RMS. I don't really know. I would try to keep it at least under 150 at maximum just to be safe, but you know, a radio like this would be fine with this, you know. And you can run this generally right off the back of the radio with a small jumper or something, or you could plug this in behind a watt meter. As long as it's in circuit before it reaches the antenna, it's going to filter both ways. It filters outgoing and incoming. So, or I'm sorry, outgoing is this way, incoming's that way. So let's say our antenna's here, our radio's here, it says it right there and there. So it will kind of knock out some impurities that maybe your receiver would pick up. It's going to filter some of that stuff out for you also, which is cool. The HF guys use this kind of stuff when they're doing contesting. There could be a guy running 40 meter on the same desk as a guy running 15 meter, and they're obviously going to be using stuff like this to help eliminate interference from band to band. Obviously their radios are probably going to be way more advanced anyways, to the point where interference is going to be at a minimum. But we all know when you're right next to someone operating a radio, there's going to be a risk for interference. These guys are helpful for that, and they're also going to be helpful for the situation where your radio isn't perfect in some situations and you have spurious emissions that you don't want or you don't even know you have. Something like this is useful. It's just something to think about. All right, well, this one's all set, so we're going to get her boxed up and ready to ship out. 73.